From the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Baseball Show. Wow. Paul Mancano, John Meoli, and Andy Kostka. We were planning to have a three-person show today anyway, but the topics that we were planning on discussing have been thrown out. I have archived our notes, never to be returned to again.
Maybe next week.
Maybe next week we'll return to normalcy, but we can't have a normal podcast here because the Orioles refuse to be normal. Last night, shocking us all out of bed by trading Grayson Rodriguez to the Los Angeles Angels in exchange for outfielder Taylor Ward. We are going to break this down from every angle. So many thoughts, so many ways that this could go. Guys, thanks for joining me here today to expound on everything, especially after what ended up being an incredibly late night for all three of us.
Yeah. 1 o'clock filings, 1:30 for me.
A little after 1. A little easier for me considering I don't have two children at home.
Yeah, two little ones.
I was telling Paul it was probably for the best that I took a little bit of a tiger snooze during Zoe's bedtime. I fell asleep in my effort of getting her to fall asleep, and I probably got like a 45-minute cat nap, which has the impact of there's a lot of people nodding along listening, which has the impact of ruining the grown-ups' bedtime and potential sleep. So it worked out fantastically, and all that is to say that I wrote many words, which will be available on the Baltimore Banner, where you can subscribe for $1 for 6 months.
Oh, look at that!
Already got that plug-in
real early. I wrote a lot of words about it. I think they're pretty clear, and I still am sitting here being like, I don't know. That's a unique spot to be in.
Andy, you've already written some words on thebanner.com too.
I did, and hopefully they are clear. My editor wrote me this morning and said that it mostly made sense.
Okay,
and I said,
that's all we can hope for.
That's good because I wrote this with my dog laying next to me, groaning that the light was on until 1:30.
The equivalent of your 3-year-old.
Yeah, she sometimes acts as much of a toddler as anyone else, but great dog. This is something that made you do a double take, and potentially a triple take, and of like every single trade in the history of trades, we won't know exactly how to feel about this until years down the road when we see how Taylor Ward performs as an Oriole and we see how Grayson Rodriguez performs as an Angel or elsewhere, depending who knows what the future holds for any of these guys, obviously. But, we know the potential of Grayson as an ace-like guy. We also know that his injury history is long, and there is never a guarantee that a guy recovers from continued lat strains and elbow debridement surgery. If we think about the elbow debridement surgery, I might be jumping the gun. Please stop me. He's healthy right now, but with a surgery like that, there is a risk that there's another issue down the line, such as Tommy John, which would be obviously a big undertaking for a player that has already had a lot of injuries. So we'll see. We'll see how this all plays out. But a lot of talent from Grayson, and unfortunately, if he's going to realize that potential, it's going to be elsewhere.
Yeah, let's talk first about what the Orioles get here in Taylor Ward before we get into the Grayson part of it all, because the Grayson part of it all is by far the most fascinating part of this entire equation. First off, it's a 1-for-1 deal. How often do you see that in baseball anymore? I feel like it's very rare that you get a 1-for-1 deal, but that's exactly what happened here. It is Taylor Ward straight up for Grayson Rodriguez. No other pieces involved, no other cash considerations, just 1-for-1. And it happens on Tuesday, November 18th. One of the first moves of the offseason around baseball. Taylor Ward, if you don't know anything about the guy, he is 31 years old. He turns 32 in a month. He is a left fielder who hits from the right side of the plate. 8-year MLB veteran, has played all 8 seasons with the LA Angels. He's a lifetime 247 hitter with a 111 OPS plus in 700 games. His best season came in 2022 when he hit 281 with 23 dingers. Last year hit a career high in homers, 36, but hit just 228 with a 116 OPS plus and a 2.7 WAR. Okay, not great left fielder. Has only played left field or DH'd each of the last 2 seasons, so don't consider him an option to play in center. Entering his final year under team control. So the Orioles are only getting 1 guaranteed season from Taylor Ward, and he's projected to get $13.7 million in his final year of arbitration.
Quick positional note, not that this is probably like 12th on the list of reasons why the Orioles would acquire him, but he was a catcher at one point in his life. He caught a little bit early in his career. So
interesting.
This is I'm not saying that he even owns catching equipment. I'm sure the Orioles can buy him something. They are fantastically well resourced, as we have heard. They can order some catching equipment for Taylor Ward if they are in pursuit of having somebody who can catch, whose name is not Adley Rutschman and Samuel Basallo for an inning, for 2 innings. If something goes terribly wrong before they can get Maverick Hanley from Norfolk, this is not, you no longer need to have a player on the roster.
How surprised would Taylor Ward be if the first thing he saw when he showed up at his locker in Sarasota was just catching gear?
Yeah, this is the new franchise catcher. Adley Rutschman is out the door. That is what I'm hearing from John Meoli.
Taylor Ward is the Adley Rutschman replacement.
It would be an improvement from when Ryan Mountcastle showed up his first spring training to find out that he was playing first base and didn't even have a first base glove. If they had catching equipment for him there, that would at least be a sign of progress 8 years later.
Yeah. All right. And then on the other side, Grayson Rodriguez just turned 26. Happy birthday, Grayson Rodriguez. He was, of course, the last first-round pick of the Dan Duquette regime, one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball for many years, only had 2 big league seasons with the Orioles, 4.11 ERA and 43 career starts, an impressive 9.8 strikeouts per 9. Andy, you touched on the injuries. A quick history of them. It was a lat injury back in 2022 that pushed back his major league debut all the way to 2023. Then a lat injury that ended his 2024 season early, was not able to pitch in the big leagues in the postseason, and then did not pitch at all in 2025. He dealt with shoulder and lat injuries for all of, the end of 2024. The injuries this year started in March when he felt sluggish in his second spring training start. 2 days later, he was diagnosed with elbow inflammation. He started the season on the IL. He was scratched from a bullpen session in mid-April, was diagnosed with mild lat strain, transferred to the 60-day in mid-June. He said he was unsure what was causing those injuries, but he was hoping to return, and then underwent elbow debridement surgery in August, which is removing a bone spur. I have called it elbow debridement. It is not elbow debridement. It is elbow debridement, as I've been told by a doctor. He is under team control through 2029. The Orioles are giving up 4 years of team control for a starting pitcher that on a team that is in desperate need of starting pitcher in exchange for 1 year of an outfielder. Guys, why the heck would the Orioles make this move?
Andy,
if you need to take that call, you can go ahead.
I'm going to have to take that call. I will say this one thing right now. I do need to take this.
Go ahead.
They must not believe in Grayson's long-term health.
Yeah. All right.
Live podcast. There's
Live
nothing
podcast.
like it.
Nothing like it.
The why is the issue here. I appreciate you talking about Taylor Ward first, because that is something that is not going to be a part of this conversation here in Baltimore, talking about the Orioles for a while. It's probably unfair to Taylor Ward, who's just like a real Major League Baseball player who exactly what you're going to get. But the Orioles, not this front office, but this organization, this team, this franchise, have a very long and unpleasant history of seeing pitchers who they think are very, very good and are going to be very, very good pitching in an Orioles uniform not do that or not live up to those expectations, and then find that ceiling elsewhere and become that pitcher that they're supposed to be on another team after the Orioles gave up on them.
Yeah.
After the Orioles deprioritized figuring it out with them. And I think that is something that you can't look beyond when you're talking about this.
Yeah.
This is somebody, this is Mike Elias didn't trade Jake Arrieta or Eduardo Rodriguez or Zach Davies or Kevin Gossman or any of these guys. But this is the context of which this trade has happened. And the idea that somebody who is very clearly like the best pitching prospect that the Orioles have had in a while, considering he was the best pitching prospect in baseball for a long time, that they know how good he can be. He was very, very good in the second half of 2023. That they know how good he can be. That they know how long they can have him under team control. This is a team that traded for Cole Irvin with 4 years of club control simply because he was a starting pitcher that had 4 years of club control. So
and options.
So like it was very valuable then. It's still valuable now. They're still trading him.
Yeah.
All you can kind of think when you're saying why is that I imagine them sitting around trying to figure out how they're going to make this rotation work with Kyle Bradish, Tyler Wells coming off Tommy John surgery, Trevor Rogers, you can probably count on for the full boat. Dean Kramer, full boat. A lot of question marks. And as they're talking about what they can rely on from Grayson Rodriguez, I'm sure somebody was like, we can't count on anything. And once that, you wonder, you have to think that's what this really comes down to. That's what this comes down to for me.
I think I'm glad you put the context there, because let's be honest, the Orioles have needed starting pitching this entire century.
Sandlot forever.
Forever, slow motion. They have needed starting pitching for forever. And that's a large part of the reason that the last couple first round picks by Dan Duquette were starting pitchers. And for the longest time, the hopes of this rotation were pinned on the futures of DL Hall and Grayson Rodriguez. Both those guys leave after just 2 big league seasons and a combined 72 appearances in the big leagues with the Orioles, which is crazy to say. And we just watched the Dodgers win a World Series with $100 million starting pitchers coming out of their bullpen. Guys who the baseball world had said for years, well, you can't really rely on the health of those guys. Well, what did the Dodgers do? They said, all right, well, we're just going to get 4 of them. And if 1 or 2 of them works out, then it works. The Orioles choosing to get rid of a guy that they can't count on just because they can't count on him is fascinating. And I think that's what a lot of fans woke up to this news or saw it last night. And their first assumption was the Orioles must not believe that Grayson Rodriguez will ever be fully healthy again, or otherwise they wouldn't make this move, right?
Yeah. And that's, and there's a world where, I'm not a doctor. We're not doctors.
Danielle is the closest.
Danielle is the closest with her shoulder injury that we have had, and I think that it's hard to understate when you get asked, or when you're thinking about, oh, is this worse than they realized? Is this worse than he's let on? Is it, did they find out that it was worse? Like, lat strains in your shoulder are objectively bad for a pitcher.
Yep.
This has happened to Rodriguez persistently for 3 years now, where this is something that has impacted his ability to get on the mound. It has been a slow burn for him to recover, because you basically need to be pain and discomfort free, and then you need to get yourself to be able to be a starting pitcher again,
right? Which
takes weeks to be able to pitch in a game and be as good as you want to be. And I think back to when we did a podcast with Danielle about her stories about like the Tommy John rehab and her rehab. And I believe she pointed out that there's a difference between what like Tyler Wells and Kyle Bradish had to do in terms of their recoveries were prescribed. Grayson Rodriguez's was very much based on how he felt in that moment, and how, and if he had to back off because he was feeling a little something in his lat, that just reset the whole clock.
Yep.
That's a really, really hard thing for us on the outside to wrap our heads around. And I don't blame him even one bit for being
cautious,
not for being realistic about his body. I think about, Chris Tillman had, like, I believe it was a lat issue and shoulder issue, and he pitched through it because the Orioles were trying to make the playoffs, and whatever year that happened, he was never the same. This is something that you can make worse. What is very interesting to me is that this move kind of signals that the Orioles are also of the view that it's maybe not something that you can easily make better. And at some point you have to make a call. And the Orioles, let's not kid about this. Like, they're making a huge call doing this.
Yeah. I mean, if the Orioles didn't believe and they don't believe that Grayson Rodriguez will ever be healthy enough to contribute regularly again. How do you square that with, at the GM meetings a couple weeks ago, Mike Elias saying that Grayson Rodriguez had already begun his throwing program and was expected to be ready for competition at the beginning of spring training?
I believe that can be true. He was ready to begin his throwing program. Remember, he missed the end of 2024. He was warming up before a game, and I believe our lip readers out on the service formerly known as Twitter caught him basically on camera saying, like, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
He did not pitch again in a game in 2024. He was on a full regular offseason throwing program leading up to this season and made 2 starts in spring training. And then we started the stop-start process again.
Yeah.
I want to make a real, I don't know why I want to make this, but I feel like there needs to be a distinction made of, like, do they believe he can be that? Like, I'm sure that they can. I'm sure that they do believe that he can be that, but it feels more of an evaluation of, do they feel like that he can be what they need?
Right.
Not can he be healthy? Can he be the frontline guy that they want? And let's not kid ourselves. They put this rotation together this year under the assumption that Grayson Rodriguez was going to be the dude.
Yeah. You mean in 2025?
In 2025, that he was going to be that guy.
Yeah. I mean, how much talk was there from the fan base, whether it was just
Brandon Hyde said it a bunch of times.
True.
Mike Elias said it, I believe. I know that Brandon Hyde said it.
It was we didn't go out and acquire an ace starting pitcher because we believe that we might have one in-house already.
Yeah. It's Grayson can be that guy for us.
Yeah.
You know, we believe Grayson can be that guy.
And then he didn't pitch at all in the big leagues.
Not a single one. So I don't think that they don't believe that he can be that, or that he is broken beyond repair. I think they probably have an incredibly firm understanding of what's going on inside his lat and his elbow and his body. And that's probably for better and for worse at this point, because they understand how tricky this is. And they also understand that I think they had to have an honest conversation of whether they could continue based on where they are and what they need right now, whether they could live that life.
Yeah.
And it seems like not.
Well, compared to where they were 11 months ago, they were counting on Grayson Rodriguez to be a number 1 or number 2 in a rotation. They came into this offseason counting on Grayson Rodriguez to not be a part of it. I mean, he was not a part of their calculus, according to Mike Elias. I mean, he said at the GM meetings that Grayson is, quote, not something we're planning around very heavily, but he's a guy that provides a real wild card for us talent-wise. So he was just, at this point, and I think that's a good way to approach it, the Orioles could not be relying on him. They couldn't be writing out on the chalkboard their potential 2026 rotation and even have him in the conversation. Because when a guy misses an entire season like that with all of these weird, questionable injuries from the elbow to the shoulder to the lat, you can't rely on that guy to be anything for you. And if you've learned anything over the last couple of years, it's that you need about 80 starting pitchers to get through a season. And so to have somebody who is an unreliable piece of that, just because of his health, that to them must have been a huge detractor. And they clearly reached the point where they said, we would rather get what we can for him than be waiting on him all season.
Yeah. And it's a puzzle that there are a ton of different solutions to. Like, if you have, I'm not going to do math, you have basically like thousands of innings you need to cover.
Yeah.
9 times 162 is, gosh, I don't know, a lot. More than 1,000 innings to cover. You have chunks of that allocated to certain people, and you have contingencies galore. Like, if you can't, count on Grayson Rodriguez's contribution to that.
9 times 162, by the way, is 1,458.
I almost said tens of thousands of innings, which
would have been way off.
Which would not have been right. So it's like a sliding scale. It's like, if you pencil in 100 innings, I mean, I don't know how many he could reasonably be expected to pitch, having not pitched in a major league game in 16 months. If you say it's 100, that feels like on the high side. If you say that it's 20 and you'd love to be surprised to the upside, that's still, you have to account for 80 more innings, and you want them to be good innings because you know what you have in a lot of other places, and you also don't.
Right.
That's something that you can't take out of this conversation, is that, 5 months a year, Dean Kramer is a guy you love to have. April, Dean Kramer is less so. Trevor Rogers became a very, very good pitcher this year, and you'd expect he will continue to be a good pitcher next year. But there was a large chunk of his career between when he was like in the Rookie of the Year mix and when he was just winning MVO, where he was not that.
Yep.
Kyle Bradish, Tyler Wells, you can expect them to be on the hook for 100-ish innings, maybe. I mean, that's the minimum. The maximum is not 200. It's probably closer to like 150, 160. And this is all tricky stuff anyways. There are so many variables. And the idea of introducing one and going through the offseason knowing that somebody who is that kind of variable might give you something, might not. You're talking to agents being like, well, is my guy going to be your number 4? I see you have Bradish and Rogers, and Rodriguez is your dude. You said he was going to be at the top of your rotation last year. Is my guy going to be the 4? Like, what kind of opportunity is there for this? And then we're talking about front end guys and back end guys, because if you're having teams, if teams think you're counting on Grayson Rodriguez and you have 4 returning starters, even depth starters are going to be like, they like this Povich kid. They like Brandon Young. They have all these pitchers coming. Am I going to get a shot here? So you're talking about an opportunity cost to having Grayson Rodriguez on the roster that is very risky to not have him on the roster, given what he can be. But I think they just had to separate those two things out.
Was that a barrier, though, for Blake Snell signing with the Dodgers? Like, when Blake Snell signed with the Dodgers last offseason, was his agent like, well, where's he going to fit into the rotation?
His agent probably said, you're giving us $35 million a year.
Right. The Dodgers offset that lack of playing time, or perceived lack of playing time, by just paying more.
Yeah. I mean, basically,
which is something the Orioles don't want to do.
Well, they don't seem like,
do you have to create the hole before you can sign the player to fill that hole?
I don't think you do. I don't think you do need to do that. And the Dodgers literally did this. They also won the World Series 2 years ago having no starting pitchers. Yeah. All of these guys ended up getting hurt. So the fact that they won this year with all these guys healthy is like, we're talking about 2 completely different titles. And we're talking about a completely different, we're talking about very different teams in their competitive phases. But the answer to your question is no, you do not need to not have Grayson Rodriguez to be able to add to your rotation. But you need to be okay with, I think, the idea of him pitching for you and contributing something. And I think that is something that is clearly an impediment they had.
Yeah. There's just so much downside with this move.
This is like, you can't even get to the Taylor Ward of it all. When I wrote about that, you can't even get to the Taylor Ward of it all without being like, the Orioles not gave up. The Orioles
gave up on Grayson Rodriguez.
The Orioles decided, and step on the column time. Like, when you think about the Jake Arrieta trade, like, everybody knew Jake Arrieta had all the talent in the world.
Right.
They traded him for Scott Feldman, who was a consistent starter who you knew exactly what you were going to get, because that's what the 2013 Orioles needed at that time.
Oh, yeah. Bird in the hand is worth 2.
Yeah. And then like Cy Young, World Series, elsewhere for Jake Arrieta.
Yeah.
Eduardo Rodriguez was a really good pitching prospect, probably other than Dylan Bundy at that time, like their best pitching prospect. They traded him for Andrew Miller because Andrew Miller was really good, and you just do that. But like, they were also frustrated with Eduardo Rodriguez at the time. He had kind of not stalled out, but wasn't having, like, he was dealing with some injuries in that 2014 season. They just moved on. Kevin Gossman, like, you were comfortable at that point with him being what he was. He was like a 30-some start a year guy for the Orioles. And they decided they needed to not have Darren O'Day's contract on their books more than they needed to have Kevin Gossman. He goes on to do incredible.
And Kevin Gossman was inconsistent he was consistently pitching, but he was inconsistent in his performance. It was like every other year he was great.
He wasn't the dude that he is now.
Sure.
And that was more structural than Kevin Gossman. But like, in all these instances, you can say that like the Orioles, some combination, there's a sliding scale of like opportunism and like frustration and concession on these pitchers becoming what they want to be in the time frame that you say that they're going to. And at that point, like those didn't work out for the Orioles long term. This feels like it has like very little to do with their long term vision or philosophy, which is an insane thing to say about an organization that has been so focused for so long about like the organizational health and the long term control and this and that. It feels like it feels like a trade that another organization or front office or team makes.
Yeah. It's as we bring Andy Kostka back into the room here. I saw the caller ID on that call and I said, Andy, you got to go ahead and take that. But Andy, I was just talking about the downside, the potential downside of this move. I mean, if Grayson Rodriguez is not healthy for 2025 and the Angels get almost nothing out of him, then you're almost certainly going to get more from Taylor Ward in 2026. You're almost certainly going to get more from Taylor Ward in 2026 than you would Grayson Rodriguez. But if Grayson Rodriguez is able, no matter what percentage chance it is, if he hits that percentage chance and he is healthy, that's a guy who can pitch in the playoffs for you. Yeah. And what is this team needed desperately is somebody who can start playoff games for their team. So pretty much no matter the percentage chance, the downside is you may have just given up a guy who could be a frontline starter for you, not just in 2026, but in 2027, 8, and 9. That is such a wide open window. And sure, the percentage chance may be 10% or less. But wouldn't you be willing to take that chance on a guy that's frankly not going to cost you a whole lot either?
That's the thing that jumps out to me. You are looking at a guy that is fairly cheap, cost-controlled starting pitcher. If he is injured 75% of the time, he's still not costing you very much. And if this team, I'm sure you've said something similar, but if this team does not have financial limitations, like David Rubenstein and Mike Elias have said, it seems hard to imagine that they would be worried about $1 million toward Grayson Rodriguez in 2026, even if he pitches 50 innings.
He's not even ARB eligible until 2027.
Yeah. So it's hard to imagine from that perspective. What it must be is that they really didn't believe in it.
Right.
And I was talking to a scout last week for a National League club, and he was saying that he found it would be interesting to him if they had moved Grayson into like a swingman role, like 3 innings, twice a week, take a little bit of stress off the arm. He thought, potentially being in a more of a reliever role could actually add stress to the arm. So there's 2 trains of thought, pitching less frequently versus, on schedule, as a starter schedule could actually, be beneficial. But there were lots of different ways you could use Grayson and try to make the most of an electric arm. Because like in 2024, for instance, I believe 14 of his 20 starts, he allowed 2 earned runs or fewer. Those are hard to find. Like it's really hard to find. You can find a lot of guys theoretically who can hit 230 with a 770 OPS. You might have that at home if Tyler O'Neill is healthy. Obviously, big if, but you might already have that. There are very few guys out there that are as cheap as Grayson Rodriguez. The value of a under team control starting pitcher with buckets of talent, it outweighs almost anything else. So, yeah.
And if you have the right expectations for him, if as we said, if you just don't count on him, if you just have him as a wild card off to the side when you were planning your 2026 rotation, his spot on the 40-man is just as relevant as Reed Trimble's, who just got added to the 40-man. Like you're not paying him much, and the opportunity cost of having him on your team is not much. So it really doesn't hurt you that much if you just don't plan around him and he's just sitting there waiting to pitch.
And sorry, this is something that like I don't know that we've been talking about this for like 35 minutes at this point. You got the ticker up there.
And we're going to go for 45 minutes more now.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that all I'm saying is that like everything that we have said and everything that we have talked about and like the ways that people in our lives in the last like 16 hours have asked us about this, like everything that we have talked about and are pointing out is something that not only is true and is objectively true, but like the Orioles know all this. Like they've had these conversations for more than 35 minutes. They thought about this and that's where I keep coming back to, like, they still decided to do this. And like, that's not to say that it's the right choice. I still don't really know what I can't imagine that I will have clear thoughts on this and like have a position other than like, wow, for a bit, but they still decided to do this. And the why is almost not relevant because they have all these reasons that we're talking about and they still did it anyways. And that is hard to wrap your head around.
I think they had this whole conversation with the exception of the part about the scar tissue from Kevin Gausman, from Jake Arrieta, which is a part that I think Orioles fans carry with them, but this regime doesn't have the scar tissue of that.
No.
And I think fans are worried that this will be this regime's version of those trades and that this regime is going to learn the lessons of the previous regime the hard way.
And yes. And this is, what did Michael Elias say when I asked very directly what they've learned from this year going as badly? So you have to adapt and you have to evolve. All anyone has wanted, and I'm not saying anybody asked for this, but all most people have wanted is for this team to stop thinking about 5 years from now and stop thinking about what can happen in the future and just say, we got to start winning. This is like this is
a chips in move for 2026.
This is only about, like, you can only make this move if that's what if you have moved your sliding scales to care so much more about 2026 than anything else, then you can look at this pretty clearly. That is, I would argue, what people have been asking Michael Elias to do for quite some time. I'm not saying anyone asked him to trade Grayson Rodriguez for Taylor Ward. Nobody asked for that. Not even a single person. But the idea that you can't do what they did last night without being way more focused on what's happening right now and this offseason and next season than you are on the 2029 Orioles. And you guys know this. I put together Baseball America rankings. You have to do a 2029 lineup. I legitimately forgot to put Grayson Rodriguez in there. I forgot about him. And like, that has nothing to do with him being traded. It's just like, that's kind of where you're at. It's like, they aren't thinking about that either. It's kind of what I'm saying.
Do you agree with this, Andy?
Yeah. I usually agree with most things John thinks and says. I think the thing that sits weirdly for me is really this idea that, I mean, heck, Grayson could have been a big impact pitcher in the 2026 lineup. Like he's healthy right now. So if we're only thinking about 2026 and your biggest need, probably besides bullpen, is starting pitching, it's interesting to me that this is the move. Maybe it is this sets up for signing Michael King and Framber Valdez. I don't know. If you sign those two, then we look at this and say, all right, that's fine.
Right.
Except of course, Michael King with his own injury issues. Almost no pitcher doesn't have injury issues. But if we're looking from what we know Grayson could be, it's a tough guy to get rid of. At the same time, Michael Elias was pretty blasé about Grayson when asked about him at the GM meetings. He said, if I recall, along the lines of Grayson being a wild card, he also said you have to be, I believe, quote, realistic about Grayson's ability to contribute when he's been out for a year and a half, pretty much at this point. So understanding those two things, it's possible that they didn't believe that he could get back to the level he was at in 2026 or even in the future. Even if he's healthy, he might not be the same pitcher he was. We don't know that. We'll find out.
They're getting off the ride. They've been on the ride for they enjoyed the ride when they taught Grayson Rodriguez a changeup in like an hour at Delmarva, and he became the best pitching prospect in baseball. That was awesome. Like, shout out to everyone involved in that. And then 3 years passed, and it's been a rocky ride. It's been really, it was really good in the second half of 2023. He was pitching well in 2024. It's been a rocky ride though, and they just got off. Yeah, they just got off the ride, and
and they didn't care about selling low.
Yeah.
I do. One thing that fascinates me, and this is not just about Grayson. This is about so many. Since 1990, Mike Messina, first round pick. We know how he turned out. Really, since then, the Orioles have not hit on a first round pitcher in decades to have a big impact first round pitcher. So that it could mean that for now, just bad luck for multiple regimes. It could mean, especially under Elias, we've seen that they don't feel like they can, they want to develop starting pitching at a price point of a first round talent. You can go either trade for a guy or you find diamonds in the rough, whatever it might be. It's just interesting that, if I'm recalling correctly, they have not had a first round starting pitcher who has really clicked for this team.
They either get hurt and aren't good, or they
trade,
or they get and that's the point of this, is now only Avenue B is available. To like, either Grayson Rodriguez was, you can like close the book on like what he was for the Orioles. He was pretty good. He didn't, based on what you hoped he would deliver in terms of performance and value, he did not pitch as much as you would want to. And that's like, that book is closed. But like, if he's going to have a prime, it's going to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
And he will be the umpteenth person who that can be said for, about that this organization has pinned its pitching hopes on and not, gotten to reap the rewards of.
This is obviously something that the front office thought about a lot. But if you can think, if Grayson pitched 40 innings for the Orioles in 2026, if we're being like worst case scenario, I think
worst case scenario is he doesn't pitch.
Is zero.
Sure. Okay, so zero.
Yeah, zero.
So, yeah, okay. So
and we were talking about that. What's the best case? If he hasn't pitched in a year plus, he built up last offseason. He was healthy this time last offseason, I believe.
Yep.
He was close to being able to pitch in the playoffs. I believe it was like a go, no go. Like, are we going to do this? And then in like late mid-September, they said he's not going to get there in time. But he's going to be good for next year. And they pinned their hopes on him being the guy who was going to top the rotation. No, rotation didn't have Corbin Burns and wasn't going to have Kyle Bradish for a long time. But how much could you realistically say that he was going to pitch this year? If you want to just say 100 innings, because that's
seems like a lot for a guy.
That's also like 15 innings a month.
Yeah.
Theoretically, like over the course of a long season. How do you get to that? How do you do that?
Right.
How do you fit that in with the Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells puzzle pieces? It's just So go ahead. Like the downside is 0 innings. The upside is
the downside is 0. The upside, we'll say 100. We'll shoot for 50 being in the middle. Does 50 innings of healthy Grayson Rodriguez for 50 innings, does that outweigh the value of 140 games of healthy Taylor Ward? Right. I don't know. I mean, that's something that they would have had to do the math on. I'm sure they had a million different outcomes that they plotted out, and they ultimately decided that for the 2026 team, the team is better with Taylor Ward in left field more times than not, I would assume, unless there are multiple other things in the works that we don't yet know about, which is always possible. So just looking at from face value in 2026, I suppose they firmly believe that you're getting more value out of Taylor Ward.
Let's talk about the Taylor Ward of it all, because he hit 36 homers last year. That was a career high. He does not hit for a high average, and I know everybody who's calling into the Baltimore sports stations this morning is saying, we just traded Grayson Rodriguez for a guy that hits 230, but that's cannot be ignored.
We should take callers.
We should take callers. That'd
be fun, actually.
That would be fun. We can read the comments as well. If you're commenting along on YouTube, X, or Facebook, I see your comments. Thank you so much for chiming in. I will try to get to some of them as well. You also could be listening to us after the fact on any of your favorite podcast platforms, in which case, we're going to say 5-star review, and I'll read it out here on the show. Taylor Ward fits what this team needs in theory, which is a right-handed hitting, power hitting outfielder. But the fact that he is only under contract for one season.
If Taylor Ward has a fantastic 2026 season and enters free agency next winter, what are the chances the O's are actually going to re-sign that guy?
They qualifying offer him and either pay him $22 million or get a pick. And both of those outcomes would probably be fine.
Yeah. That's true.
They hit Anthony Santander with a qualifying offer for having an 810 OPS and 40 home runs. You can see him you can see a similar world. Trent Grisham just accepted it. I don't know if we're talking about the same player. We're probably not. That was probably, but you can have a really good year and get a qualifying offer.
Sure.
And and you can also have a bad year and not getting a qualifying offer.
Do you though, John, specifically, because you mentioned this before we went live, do you think that this is the last move for the outfield? Because right now you're looking at Colton Cowser, who is going to be your right now with your group. Colton Cowser is really the only one who can play center field right now.
Yeah, Leody Taveras.
Is in the mix, added on a major league deal for $2 million.
Reed Trimble
a couple years ago. Reed Trimble, who's in AAA, just added to the 40-man roster. Can't stay healthy, unfortunately, and pretty surprisingly added to the 40-man roster to protect him from the Rule 5 draft.
Surprisingly in that sense, but I've not ever been at a baseball game that Reed Trimble's played in and not been all right. He always does stuff that's good. And you're all right. But the problem is those baseball games happen. You see him once at the beginning of the season, once at the end.
Yeah.
Other than this year. And sorry to derail things.
Was Reed Trimble same draft class as Colton Cowser?
Yes.
Yeah. Same group, along with Colton Cowser and Connor Norby, but made it up to AAA. Other than that, Reed Trimble, though, they have Colton Cowser, they have Tyler O'Neill,
Enrique Bradfield.
Enrique Bradfield is in AAA. They have Dylan Beavers. This is just a lot of names that we're throwing out at you right now. John, you don't think that they're done in the outfield?
I don't think that they're done. As it stands right now, the closest Colton Cowser is going to get to a left-handed starting pitcher is if he eats lunch next to Trevor Rogers. It's just never going to happen again. And that might be the outcome of his life, that might be just what we're doing with Colton Cowser. But as it stands right now, if you want Dylan Beavers to play regularly, if you want Colton Cowser to play regularly, if you think whatever happened with Heston Kjerstad will not be a thing anymore.
Yeah, Heston Kjerstad.
There's so many outcomes here. And you could look at this as a very expensive, very risky, replay of the Ramon Laureano, Tyler O'Neill insurance that they did last year. And we're very glad to have had. But it doesn't feel like this is finalized. And this is an insane thing to say without ever doing any reporting, or this is purely speculation. But if the Orioles got off the Grayson Rodriguez ride at this point, because they just don't know what they can count on and they know what they need and they prioritize what they need more than the uncertainty, they should be calling teams right now offering to pay a significant amount of Tyler O'Neill's salary to get nothing in return other than the opportunity to not have Tyler O'Neill on the roster anymore. And have this be your right hand, have Taylor Ward be your Tyler O'Neill replacement theoretically and still be shopping in the big outfield bat category and improve the outfield by virtue of having somebody who is relatively durable and can give you pretty similar to what you expected from Tyler O'Neill without the uncertainty and also add to it.
So to me, if the Tyler O'Neill signing looked like it was working one season in, if the 2025 season went great for Tyler O'Neill, this move doesn't happen.
Well, he would have opted out.
He would have opted out.
He would have opted out.
That's true. Never mind.
But maybe it would. Maybe they were just maybe this has just been on the target board since last year. It's we're going to trade Grayson Rodriguez to the Angels because we could trade them any pitcher we want. If we need to trade a pitcher, we're just going to call the Angels and we're going to give them Grayson Rodriguez. And we're going to get Taylor Ward because Tyler O'Neill's going to opt out. And then August, they're well, that part's not going to happen, but the rest can. Who knows?
It was the whole. The Tyler O'Neill signing, in a way, was a little bit of a lose-lose, because if he was going to have a great season, he was going to opt out. You're going to be in the same spot that you were last year. But I think a lot of people saw this move go down and thought, why did we have to trade Grayson Rodriguez to get a right-handed hitting outfielder? Why couldn't we just sign that guy? And I think that outfield depth in the free agent market isn't nearly what it is on the starting pitching side. There's on the left-handed side, you have Kyle Schwarber, if you could still consider him an outfielder, but I think he's more of a DH at this point.
Sure.
Kyle Tucker, who's going to cost $400 million or more. And then on the right-handed side, you really had Harrison Bader, who's coming off a very good season this past year, could have played center for you. And then you didn't really have a second tier beyond Harrison Bader who would have fit the Orioles. There was no
Cedric Mullins is a free agent.
Yeah, but if you wanted him to be hitting from the right side, Mullins hits from the left. Had a very poor second half with the Mets as well.
Yeah, you could have gone for Bellinger, left hand bat, can play center. But I think somebody can look this up. I think Taylor Ward had more wins above replacement than Harrison Bader last year. So
they were close.
They were close, but that would be an interesting if they did a head-to-head comparison of those two purely from a batting standpoint.
Ward had 2.7, Bader had 3.9. So Bader,
not even close. Oh, never mind. I'm an idiot.
Bader had the better season.
Yeah.
But there is only one Harrison Bader.
Yeah.
And if you put him at the top of the board the way that the Orioles probably did with Teoscar Hernandez last year, and Bader goes, nah, I'm just going back to the Phillies, well, then you're SOL.
Yeah, then you have to do something like sign Tyler O'Neill because he's basically the only person who fits the bill of what you're looking for at that point. And and you know, there's a lot of, I mean, we could do this for hours. We still might, I don't know. But and I think this is a fascinating, I'm not going to end this, but I think it's a fascinating kind of like thing to do is that last year, Paul, we sat here a lot of times and Andy was here too. And you talked about Andy and you talked to Danielle and talked to Kyle and talked to me. And we talked about all these incremental things that the Orioles did and like how they made sense for what was happening. Like we tried to make sense of them incrementally.
Yeah.
And it's at once an abdication of like duty to like be like, well, who even knows what this is like? We'll see. We'll talk in February, but like, this is the type of move that like shakes the snow globe so much that like 4 different things that probably were going to happen anyways need to happen for this to be able to be evaluated for its 2026 Orioles sense. The snow in the snow globe is that like they traded Grayson Rodriguez away and like that is just a thing that has happened and like they can really regret that. And like this is a huge thing that happened, but as we're talking about the Taylor Ward of it all and how the outfield's going to shake out. I mean, at this point, like the non-tender deadlines this week. Is there a world where you need a Ryan Mountcastle if you have a Kobe Mayo and you have 2 right-handed hitting outfielders plus a bench outfielder plus 2 catchers? Like there's a lot of stuff that's going to come out of this move. And I just don't know how to evaluate it in the vacuum that you kind of need to, because this is the least vacuum thing in the world.
When you hearken back to the conversations that we had around the trade deadline as kind of the precursor for all this, what got me thinking last night was, what did we spend the last several months saying? That the Orioles now have more ammo to go and get guys via trade. And we were really thinking mostly in the starting pitching side.
Trey Gibson for a pitcher.
Yes. So like, if you just got all of this quote unquote middle class group of prospects that the Orioles have lacked for so long, they've always had the high end guys and then 50 feet of a gap and then a lot of lower end prospects who couldn't really be traded for anything. Now they have this glut in the middle of their farm system that they can trade from, like guys like Boston Bateman and those guys that they just acquired. Why couldn't they use those guys to go and get Taylor Ward if they wanted to? Or another guy who's on the trade market, Byron Buxton, as somebody who can still play center field.
And like
maybe that's to come.
That's the thing. They still can. Like that's not a position, you know. I also, like Mike Elias, have tried to adapt and evolve based on how the last year plus of Orioles baseball has gone. Like I am not as I don't think that, and I don't think there's as much evidence to support like there's no longer like, oh, well, here's the plan. I'm not going to be like, okay, well, this is what they probably think and this is why they did it. Like that's a part of this, but like there needs to be a justification that people outside of the warehouse see in the things that they do. And it needs to work. That's important too. This stuff needs to work. Like last year didn't work. So how are you going to react the same way? All this is to say that there's just so much to be done independent of this and with this that you're just like sitting here being like, we talked about this for a long time, and like it just comes down to they traded Grayson Rodriguez away they traded Grayson Rodriguez away, and like that's wild to me.
What did Elias say to you at the GM meetings talking about trading from your big league team? He said you don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul.
Correct.
And they traded for somebody who, as you said, Andy, can in theory be a contributing piece in 2026 instead of some lower level prospects.
Yeah. At the same time, Mike Elias was very open at the GM meetings that Grayson potentially wasn't a huge part of their plans for 2026. You cannot, and this is credit where it's due. Like potentially they learned.
He called a shot, and he called a shot.
They learned that, they went into 2025 thinking that Charlie Morton, Tomoyuki Sugano were good enough additions for, and maybe I'm forgetting something, but like the main, additions to your rotation, banking on the fact that, you're going to get Kyle Bradish back. You're going to get Tyler Wells back. You're going to, Grayson's going to be healthy. Kyle Bradish came back, but not until August
when you were out of it. Yeah.
Same with Tyler Wells. and then Grayson never pitched. So this is in a sense, they did learn potentially.
Yeah.
And it's showing an aggressiveness to say, shoot, we're going to make a massive deal, and massive in terms of you're giving up potentially a lot in Grayson for a 1-year guy, because maybe they learned that you cannot bank solely on Grayson being a huge part of things. Instead, you're going to have to. If this is showing aggression, I think it's a good sign for what they're going to do in the starting pitching market, because it's clearly now you already needed a frontline starter, and now you probably need 2 or 3 additions. Not necessarily 2 frontline guys. You could, but you're going to need to add depth, because even before the Grayson Rodriguez trade, there wasn't much depth.
Yeah, you still have only Trevor Rogers, Kyle Bradish, Dean Kramer is like your guaranteed pieces. And then you have Cade Povich, Tyler Wells,
and Brennan Young that are kind of question marks on what they can do.
If you had to make a rotation tomorrow, you would include those 2 of those latter 3 guys. Sure. But I don't think anybody here would feel great about those guys being cemented into the opening day rotation. The Orioles are going to need a lot, and they're going to need to spend big to get a lot of these guys, like a Framber Valdez or a Dylan Cease or whoever it is.
If anything, this shows an aggression that is probably a good thing for Orioles fans to see. And it's not going to be the last move of the offseason. I can almost guarantee that.
No. And I think you make a good point. Like, we've said it a lot. Michael Elias just said this. Like, we don't know what we can count on. Like, he said very explicitly to reporters, I don't know if he was standing in a scrum or sitting down, standing in a scrum.
To Jake and I.
Yeah. So he said this knowing that it was going to be out there in the world. And let's talk about a world where he doesn't make this trade. Having said out loud that, like, we don't really know what we can count on for him. Like, you have to be realistic about this. And they go out and sign 1 starting pitcher because he's sitting in his office every day with the knowledge that Grayson Rodriguez might pitch for the Baltimore Orioles in 2026 and be really good at it. They already did that. And like that's like once you have that thought and once you say that out loud, you're not too far from being like, well, what are we doing then? What are we doing with this? What are we waiting around for? And if you are waiting around for that possibility that he could do this, then you are effectively giving yourself like a safety net of like, well, I might only be able to get 1 of these guys and I could try for a second, but we got Grayson, so maybe I won't. That's not something he can do anymore because they don't have Grayson Rodriguez anymore.
Yeah.
And like, it's almost like, turning the degree of difficulty up a little bit, but like you have to meet that challenge now in a way that the idea of maybe having Grayson Rodriguez to pitch at some point in the 2026 season for the Baltimore Orioles does not allow you to fully go there because that idea is always in your head.
Yeah.
I've talked in circles in, the last, what are we at? Like 14 hours or whatever since this happened. My mind has been on like, one end to the other. And on this exact podcast, I have talked about, this is a great deal. This is a terrible deal. I don't have an idea. And we're not. The only thing I think it boils down to is it showed a level of aggression, and that's a good thing.
I mean,
that's all I can.
Ultimately, they were convicted on it, which tells you that they must, one way or the other, whether it is that they don't believe that Grayson Rodriguez will ever be fully healthy, or that they don't believe that he will ever be himself again, or whatever it is, or that they think Taylor Ward can be an all-star in 2026. They were convicted enough to make this move. And I think we just all assumed that when Elias made those comments about we can't count on Grayson Rodriguez, that he was just going to put Grayson Rodriguez off to the side and not think about him. And this was clearly him thinking about Grayson Rodriguez. And it has been for a while, because this move gets done so early in the offseason before any of these outfielders come off the board, any of these free agents come off the board. You know, the Tyler O'Neill signing was mostly a reaction to Teoscar Hernandez indicating that he wanted to go back to the Dodgers. Before they even find out about the outfielders like Harrison Bader and Kyle Tucker and all these guys, they went ahead and said, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to get our guy, and we're going to be aggressive in getting rid of Grayson Rodriguez. We're not going to sit on our hands and wait for the market to take shape here.
It leaves so many possibilities open for the rest of the winter.
Yeah.
The fact that you make deals early, getting Leody Taveras as outfield depth, ability to play center. It's only $2 million, and if it doesn't work out, if what they say is true about their financials, you're not going to cry over $2 million. Same thing with $13.7 million for 1 year of Taylor Ward. If that is that's the projection for his last year arbitration. For a team in this era, a winning team in this era, like 13.7 isn't that much in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
So you're willing to take that chance. And this doesn't prevent them from making more splashes in the future. So I guess, jumping the market, and you still have so many different possibilities open, including, they could turn around tomorrow and trade Colton Cowser as part of a deal for Freddie Peralta. Actually, they don't need a center fielder in Milwaukee, so they wouldn't do that. But you could do something of that ilk. I'm not saying they will or that they should. I'm just, there's so many different outcomes that can still happen because they were early in the process.
We've kind of exhausted ourselves with talk here, but
can I say one more quick thing?
Please.
They're going to club option Taylor Ward so hard. He is 100% going to agree to an ARB number with a $15 million club option, and that's just going to happen.
Or I mean, the alternative is they just give him the 1 year, they settle on a number, and then wait for him to hit the market and hope that he's good enough to earn a qualifying offer.
Yeah, no, I mean, but I'm just saying that there's a history of they are club option people.
Yep.
They are club option people because there's a buyout and the person's guaranteed some money, and it's going to be a club option deal. Okay. That's a weird way to end this.
Quick take. Is Ryan Mountcastle on the team next year?
If I had a water gun to my head, I say no.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say, go ahead. Sorry.
No, but because I think there are two outcomes to him not being on the team. One is that he gets non-tendered, and the other is that he gets tendered a contract and traded.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to stick on the yes because I think he should be. I don't think you should get rid of him, but I am very comfortable with the fact that's going to be wrong. Based on the last 24 hours, honestly, it's really hard to, it's really hard to say this is something that they can go into the season. I mean, you can go into spring training and be like, someone's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm going to say yes because I just want to wish it into existence. But
one quick question. Grayson Rodriguez had to have been at Gunnar Henderson's wedding last week, right? Probably.
Most likely. I imagine a lot of guys were. I admittedly was not there.
What?
So I don't know who exactly.
Our invites must have gotten lost in the mail. All that to say, I just wonder how this is going over in the clubhouse.
Well, you get tight with guys, and I know it impacted a lot of people when Ryan O'Hearn was traded, and he was around for a lot fewer years. It impacted guys when Ramon Laureano was traded, and he was around for about 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's it's also a wake up call. Let's now we're talking. I'm so sorry, everybody. They're still listening. It's also a wake up
John
call.
pulls out his phone.
No, I'm just trying to see what. Yeah,
It's also a wake up call. Like, just because you were a member of this young core doesn't mean you're safe and guaranteed a spot. Like that's also
Absolutely. It certainly is. And quite frankly, this team, given last year's performance, has to prove a lot this year.
They have to operate on a little bit of a ruthless level because they were such underperformers last year across the board, and not pointing fingers at any one player. It was a team underperformance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. We've said a lot of words. There are a lot more words that these two have written on thebanner.com. And I'm sure Kyle Goon will have a take. We're going to have so much more to think and to talk and to write about over the coming weeks. We will have another episode for you next week, unless Mike Elias shocks the world again, wakes us up in the middle of the night. At John Meoli is John's handle. At AF Kostka is Andy's on all of the social media platforms. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm at Paul Mancano and at Old Banner Sports. Andy, thanks for joining us.
Oh, please. It was my pleasure.
John, maybe now that the first move of the offseason has been done, maybe I'll start finally watching the Fast and Furious movies.
At this rate, we're not going to have time. There's so much happening.
It's just not going to happen. Thanks so much for tuning in. For John Meoli and Andy Kostka, I'm Paul Mancano. We'll catch you next time.